repairing the world, making it a better place. That's what you're doing by supporting American Jewish World Service. That's AJWS. We are a different kind of Jewish organization, one that pursues justice for people of diverse backgrounds in other countries. In fact, we are the only Jewish organization dedicated solely to ending poverty and promoting human rights in the developing world. That's been our mission, our passion, and our pride since we were founded in 1985.
As Jews, we must also consider ourselves as part of the human family, the large human family, and therefore try to help. That is what the organization is trying to do.
We began this work by sending aid to some of the poorest people in the developing world. Now we support thousands of leaders in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Advocates who are addressing the root causes of poverty and oppression. We fight for civil and political rights around the globe. Simply put, that's justice under the law for all, the right to be heard, vote, and participate in political life. We fight for sexual health and reproductive rights, supporting women, girls, and LGBT people as they work to stop violence, end discrimination, and child marriage. We fight for the rights of poor, rural, and indigenous people to the land and water they rely on to survive, free from exploitation, pollution, and environmental degradation. We insist that governments and companies consult local communities about the use of their land, water, and other natural resources. And when disasters strike, we provide immediate relief and ongoing aid for long-term recovery, even after others leave. Over the past 3 decades, we've raised $316 million to promote human rights, empower thousands of local leaders, and bring a just world closer for millions of people.
Our work takes place at the intersection of Jewish values and some of the most challenging global concerns. And crucially, we provide American Jews with the opportunity to stand up proudly as Jews for the dignity and rights of poor and oppressed people worldwide.
In the current year, we are investing $28.5 million for 450 social change organizations in 19 countries. Our 150,000 supporters, including you, make this critical, life-changing work possible.
AJWS is an institution that is not just a grant-making institution. This is an organization or an institution with a heart and a soul.
The truth is, listening to others, seeking justice, and giving generously are AJWS's Jewish values. Yes, giving for justice, or tzedakah, is our path. No matter where we live, what we do, or who we are, we can all repair the world. We are building a better future, and we couldn't do it without you.
Welcome all. My name is Alon Shalev. I'm very proud to serve as the Executive Director of American Jewish World Service in San Francisco in the Western region. Thank you for coming today at a moment in time when our work is more critical than ever. Thank you on behalf of the board and staff of AJWS, but most of all, thank you on behalf of the 450 grantee organizations we support and the millions of people they serve. These brave community activists, in the face of considerable danger and intimidation, stand up daily to change their lives and their communities. Today, you will hear from 2 remarkable women who have helped transform the destinies of women and girls in Liberia and India and around the world. And a special thank you to those who invest in our work. We simply could not do it without you. It is my pleasure to invite 4 exemplary supporters. Our co-chairs for the luncheon, Jocelyn Goldfein, Brian Johnson, Professor Shelley Fisher-Fishkin, and Professor Jim Fishkin.
It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here today. I've been a supporter of American Jewish World Service for years because I so admire the distinctive mission that it's carved out for itself. Recognizing that poverty and human rights can't be separated from each other, AJWS works to empower some of the most disadvantaged people on the planet by helping them build a future in which they can meet their own needs and those of their children in a world which recognizes and respects their rights. I love being a small part of helping them achieve that goal. AJWS seeks out the local, grassroots level individuals who can make this happen and supports them by giving them what they need to build organizations and initiatives that can change their world and ours. It also connects them with others engaged in similar work so that they can have maximum impact. Whether it's working to end child marriage or to help survivors of natural disasters like earthquakes, typhoons, and drought recover and rebuild their lives, whether it's helping impoverished communities find food resources and access to clean water, or helping refugees from violent political and social conflicts remake their worlds, AJWS respects the knowledge of those who are living these challenges and does all it can to help them meet them. It supports those who are working to advance human rights, civil rights, political rights, and social justice on 3 continents, and helps them build social movements that can sustain the change they seek to bring about. I love the fact that AJWS does this crucial social justice work as a Jewish organization acting on the Jewish imperative to seek justice. Supporting AJWS is one of my favorite forms of tikkun olam, a really effective way to repair the world, and our world needs repairing now more than ever. At a time when our government is backing away from the most minimal efforts to take responsibility for alleviating global poverty and for standing up against human rights abuses around the world, AJWS's commitment to these goals is all the more important. American Jewish World Service helps people not because they're Jewish, but because we're Jewish. I value that enormously. It's a privilege to welcome you here today to an event that honors individuals who have dedicated themselves to making the world a more just, sane, and humane place. An esteemed and distinguished Stanford colleague, a Nobel Laureate peace activist, and a leader helping women and girls make a profound difference in one of the most oppressed communities on the planet. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today with me and with AJWS to honor Terry Winograd. Terry was my professor and advisor at Stanford, and he taught me a lot about technology and a lot about human beings. Terry and I share a passion for social justice, and it's a real pleasure to have AJWS in common with him. I came to AJWS because I hold 2 somewhat incompatible theses about philanthropy. I knew I wanted to invest my resources in fundamentally hard problems: the assurance of human rights, an end to war and poverty. I knew the most effective way to tackle big and tractable issues like that is with grassroots movements led by people who are local, informed, on the ground, in the trenches. At the same time, supporting any one of those organizations felt like a drop in the ocean. As an engineer, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, I was looking for leverage, for scale. AJWS cut the Gordian knot. Their model puts resources directly in the hands of those positioned to do the most good, and their network of support, advocacy, and yes, fundraising offers the opportunity to enable grassroots movements at scale. I was hooked. In 2014, I got to see AJWS's work firsthand as part of a study trip to India. We met with a wide variety of grantees, including AWAZ, supporting victims of domestic violence, Nirantar, working to spread literacy and educating hundreds of thousands of rural women, a union organizing scrap pickers, teetering on the edge of economic viability, and many more. I went on the trip expecting to admire the good work, and I did. I was also humbled to realize how very much these leaders have to teach us about the most effective ways to bring about social change, and honored that these world-class activists would take the time to share their expertise with us. Speaking of world-class activists, it is now my honor to introduce to you AJWS President and CEO Robert Bank. It is no exaggeration to say that Robert has been fighting injustice his entire life. He was born in South Africa to anti-apartheid activists, studied music and law in New York, and built a luminary career at the Gay Men's Health Crisis, fighting HIV/AIDS and promoting LGBT rights. He joined AJWS in 2009 and has been essential to refining our strategy and mission before rising to lead the organization last year. If you spend time with Robert, you will experience for yourself that he is warm, funny, and deeply committed to the mission. More than that, you will come away reassured that we can succeed despite all the obstacles. Robert and I share a favorite quote from Rabbi Hillel in Pirkei Avot. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. I like to think this is the rabbi giving us permission to say, hey, we don't have all the answers. We don't have to have all the answers. We just have to get to work. Here to tell you more about the work, please welcome Robert Bank.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for your kind words. Jocelyn, you are not only a role model for all women and men in tech, but you've provided me personally with so much smart guidance over the years. And thank you to you, Brian, Shelley, and Jim for your deep commitment to AJWS. Today is a celebration of global justice leadership. So I'd like to begin by recognizing the extraordinary board leaders of AJWS who are with us today. Our board chair, Monty Doob, our vice chairs, Marion Bergman and Jim Koshland, our board members, our fantastic West Coast board members, and one visiting from LA, Jay Cohan, Jamie Doobie, Howard Kleckner, Sharon Leslie, Russ Pratt, Eric San, and Bill Resnick, all remarkable people. And it is wonderful also to have Don Abramson with us today. Don, former board chair of AJWS and Bay Area supporter. Thank you for being here, Don. I also want to acknowledge several other distinguished guests. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Leymah Gbowee, renowned Indian women's rights activist Madhavi Kukreja, President and CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Mayer, Executive Director of the Candida Fund, Dina Kimball, and Managing Partner of Wellspring Advisors, John Taylor. Some of you have traveled long distances to be with us. Some of you have traveled in between countries in other continents to be with us. And almost all of you have traveled from other states. I'm truly honored that you are with us. We are here today to honor Terry Winograd. Terry is one of the most influential people in the history of computer technology. And you'll be hearing more about Terry from Marissa Mayer later. But there is no way on earth that Robert Bank can stand up here without saying something either about Terry or about his wife, Carol. Carol is a professor emerita of medicine and human biology at Stanford. She's an expert in geriatric medicine. She's a devoted peace activist, a thoughtful philanthropist, and a champion for the rights of women and girls. One of my favorite authors and educators, Parker Palmer, wrote that good teaching cannot be reduced to technique. Good teaching comes from the identity and the integrity of the teacher. Terry has been that teacher to countless students, some of whom have gone on to be world-changing entrepreneurs. And Terry has also been that teacher to me. I first traveled with Terry and Carol to Thailand in 2013 on a trip to visit AJWS grantees. And I must confess that I fell deeply in love with both of them. Together, we visited inspiring leaders and communities that are developing creative solutions to complex global problems such as poverty, sexual violence, and ethnic discrimination. Inspired by his numerous trips with AJWS, Terry drafted, we did not ask him to draft this, Terry drafted and sent us a powerful essay about the similarities between investing in technology and how AJWS invests in social change. He articulated 5 core principles that investors in Silicon Valley and AJWS share. 1, invest early. 2, take risks. 3, bets on passionate people. 4, develop supportive networks. And 5, look for game-changing opportunities. There is indeed a beautiful synergy between these principles that Terry articulated and those that have guided AJWS for over 30 years. And AJWS places women and girls at the center of our strategic investment model. Why? Why do we do this? We do this because development experts agree that investing in women and girls everywhere is the most effective way to build a world in which all people can live safe, dignified, and healthy lives. And Nobel Peace Prize Laureate Leymah Gbowee continues to prove this every day. What an honor to have Leymah with us today. I'm humbled to say that long before Leymah won the Nobel Peace Prize, AJWS connected with her to support her transformative work. Leymah won the Nobel Peace Prize for the pivotal role she played in ending the devastating 14-year civil war in Liberia. She mobilized women from all walks of life and across religious and ethnic lines to demand peace. And she succeeded. She ended a civil war. Leymah has written a brilliant book called Mighty Be Our Powers. I can't recommend her book highly enough. When you read it, you will see what Leymah and hundreds and thousands of Liberians have had to endure. Brutality and violence that most of us cannot even begin to imagine. Her title, Mighty Be Our Powers, reminds us that each one of us has the power to make positive change in a world that is in desperate need of repair. Leymah is a true hero of mine. Her warmth, her spirit, and her humanity inspire me deeply. She is a global leader that AJWS has been privileged to partner with for the past 13 years. Leymah's message is clear. Girls can make a difference. Women do change history. Please join me in welcoming Nobel Peace Prize Laureate Leymah Gbowee.
Thank you, Robert. I don't find myself as someone who's shy, but every time you heap all of those nice words on me, I find myself blushing. And that's not a typical West African thing. We don't blush. It's truly an honor for me to be here, and coming to this event was not something that I had to overthink. The only thing I had to do was overthink how I manage my 8 children, because this is the moment when everyone has to be preparing to go back to Africa. Over 13 years ago, a group of friends and myself decided that we were going to change history in our country. With $10 out of the handbag of one of the sisters, we sat down and wrote a statement. And in that statement, we had indicated that we wanted 3 things to happen. immediate unconditional ceasefire, a fruitful dialogue between the warring parties, and the deployment of an intervention force. Those three things were the three things the dictator of the day, Charles Taylor, was refusing to do. One, he would fight till the last soldier died. Two, as a legitimate government, he could never negotiate with rebels. Three, Liberia was a sovereign state, and he was not going to allow foreign troops on his ground. When we wrote the statement, we sat in the room, 7 of us, thinking, so who do we say wrote this statement? And one of the sisters said, the women of Liberia. And my answer to them was, isn't that fraudulent for 7 people to sit in a room and call themselves the women of Liberia? And so we decided we would name ourselves. But this is a time when the government had issued an order that if anyone protested, the president had said even his mother, they should be arrested and flogged. So we sat down and wrote our names. And then someone said, so what do we do with this statement? We said, let's publish it. But we do not have the money. And one woman reached in her bag and said, this is all that I have, $10 US. We called a female journalist, Janet, that we knew, and said, Janet, can you publish this? She said, I can do that. The next morning, every news outlet wanted to meet the 7 brave women who dared to put their names on that paper. That was the beginning of the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace. From 7 women with only $10, we transformed into over 20,000 women in 14 communities across Liberia. One UN worker described us as the cancer that had eaten Liberia during the war, because everywhere you turn, there were cells of women in white protesting the war. By the time we were ending that work, we begin to think that peace we cannot say that we found peace by the signing of the accord. We needed to do something to ensure that we had sustainable peace. Those women again decided, let's continue, but we need to be a part of the democracy. Where are we going to get money to do civic and voters education? Through a stroke of luck, someone said the American Jewish World Service. So we decided, let's sit down. I didn't own a laptop at the time, I must say. And being in San Francisco is really weird that 13 years ago, I didn't own a laptop. So I sat down and wrote the proposal with my hand, and then I sent it to someone who typed it up, and we sent it by email. We sent it, and after a week, we heard back that a grant of $10,000 had been given to us. We were over the moon, because this is the first time some sustained entity had taken a risk with us. We went on to do civic and voters education, and by the time we ended, because all of the work that we had done in communities and our analysis of the political situation was showing that women were not going to come out to vote, even though we had been heavily involved in the peace process. One, because in the history of Liberia, women were never allowed to vote except women property owners, and that was in 1957. So ordinary women that I work with did not even have the clue that they had any stake in the political process. We went to the UN and asked them to give us money. No one would believe us. 5 days into voters registration, they came back to us to say, we are not getting any women registered. Fortunately, we had the seed grant from AJWS. We got into 7 communities and deployed 250 women. And over 5 days, we were able to register over 10,000 women who would not have registered anyway. By the time we finished our effort and other women's organizations finished, we had 50 plus 1 women register than men. And that we have Africa's first female president is not rocket science. Moving into that work, we decided we wanted to do something around justice for women. And I'll tell you all this crazy story. Because then we wrote back to AJWS and said we needed to do a radio program where women could talk about their issues. So we sent the proposal. Of course, they were comfortable with us because we had done a great job the first time. And I think they scaled it up a bit to $12,000. So we got that money and decided we're going into rural communities to meet with about 50 women so that they tell us what we needed to discuss on the radio program. And we're going to train them so that they will be on the radio talking about their issues. So we did a conference-style workshop, and by the time we had spent 3 hours in the room, one of the women said, I want to go outside. This room is too hot. I never went to school. I don't want to sit on chair. And everyone started revolting. So I was like, okay, I'm in big trouble here. We went outside, sat in front of the church that we were using as the space to work. And one after the other, each of these women were telling us different stories. One told us the story of how she pushed the soldiers in her community for justice until she got it. Another told the story how her daughter was raped on her way to school. Another told the story of the domestic violence. One after the other, each 50 women told their story. And for 3 days, we just sat down and people told us the story. Finally, at the end of the day, I turned to my assistant and said, we've listened to the story and we've not done the work. What are we going to tell the donors? And then we said to the women, but this is not what we came to do. You all just told us stories. So what are those things that we're going to do on the radio program? And one of the older women who had never sat in class looked at me for a long time and said, don't tell me you are that dumb. Every story we told you over the last 3 days are the things that we want to talk about on the radio. So we went back, sat down, and started breaking the stories down. There were justice issue, rape issue, reproductive health issue, early marriage issue, and those were the issues that we decided to do. Fast forward, I moved to Ghana after getting my graduate degree and started an organization. Decided that we've done great work with women and needed to work with girls. Again, AJWS came through. This time, they scaled it up to $20,000. I went into different communities working with young girls, telling them the importance of education. I met several young girls on that journey, but I want to tell you about 2 of them. One, Georgia Ginoway. Georgia was a very active young woman when we met her. She was in college, and she said to me, Madam, you know, it's very, very hard to go to school. Sometimes these older men will say, you're telling us that we need to go to get education, we have to stick it out. How do you, when people are telling you have to sleep with them to do it? And if you really want education, sometimes you have to succumb. And I turned to her and said, there's always another way. So we worked with that one. I met another one, Juanita, who before she was 20 already had 5 children because she had been raped repeatedly during the war. And she was never really sure of herself that she could finish high school, but she was just pushing herself until we met her. And then I told her, you know, you can be a leader. She said, I feel like I can be a leader. We decided to set up a reading room, again with support from AJWS in her community. And the day we walked into that community, I went with my jeans, my t-shirt, and ready to work. I got into the community 10 in the morning. The hut that we had formed to set up the reading room was already painted. The entire community had been mobilized by Juanita. When we started the foundation, we gave Juanita a scholarship. She went to college, finished high school, went to college. Today she has a bachelor's in agriculture, worked with an agriculture organization, and her dream is to start her own farm. Georgia graduated a year ago from the Clinton School of Government, and she's currently working here in the US, hopefully to go back home and continue what she started doing, mobilizing young people. Finally, last year, again, we went back to AJWS and said, we have students, we're paying their school fees, but we recognize that these girls are not taking on leadership role. And they gave us money, $30,000, to do the work. We took these girls into a room for 3 weeks where they did training, met with different women, and afterwards, 20 of them in 2 different groups decided to do their projects for change in their community. Today, I'm proud to report that these girls are in their community working with other girls and telling them about the importance of education. But beyond that, this group of young women, this year's elections, decided, even though most of them are first-time female voters, they were going to work with women activists to mentor them and go into grassroots community to help other young people do the work that they do. To say that I'm a hero, I would be lying to you, I'm not. What I do is that I feel something in my heart and I step out to do it. But feeling something in your heart and stepping out to do it is one thing. Finding an organization that trusts you, that believes in you and decide that I will invest, even though I don't know where the hell this is going, but I'm just trusting that this is a game-changing idea. And this is what AJWS has been to me. When I say I did not have to think too much about coming to this program, it's because I tell people I'm loyal to 3 key organizations: AJWS, the African Women's Development Fund, and anything that Abby Disney does. The reason why I say this is because even in my craziest moment, these are people who I can turn to. During the Ebola crisis, I pick up the phone and call Ruth and say, "You've heard." She said, "I was waiting for this call." They again contributed to our grassroots initiative. All of these things that I've just told you, and the stories are not just stories. These are transformative stories, stories where young people, women in their communities have taken charge of peace effort, justice effort, and educational effort. Young women have been mentored and socialized to believe that they can be the change that they read about. And all of this has been possible because the American Jewish World Service continues to invest in my work. The beauty of their investment is that they never come to me and say, "This is our idea of change." It's what idea of change do you have? And that's the idea of change we're going to invest. I tell my kids I have at least 15 more years to keep doing the kind of work that I do. And I know for the next 15 years of my active advocacy work, I can count on AJWS to help me make the change that I've been making in my community. To Robert and his team, I want to say a big thank you by standing by this crazy African woman, even when you didn't know where we were headed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Leymah, for sharing your story with us today and also in your wonderful book, Mighty Be Our Powers. The role that women played in ending the civil war in Liberia is a powerful example of what can happen when women come together. The civil war in Liberia stopped only when Christian and Muslim women united across what many saw as an impossible divide. And they did so with some really awesome chutzpah. And if you want to find out what I mean, you have to read the book. It's truly inspiring, and we're very grateful to you for having taken the time to join us today and for having made it clear how important American Jewish World Service was in helping you accomplish all the remarkable things that you've done. Thank you.
I just wanted to add my thanks to Shelley's. Leymah, that was incredibly inspiring. I could not be more proud that AJWS, that in some small way I've supported an organization that was an early backer of the Women's Liberian Mass Action for Peace. And I think your story is such an amazing demonstration of the massive impact that can come from a grassroots social movement operating at scale. There's no way to calculate an ROI on that, but the power of such small grants to enable a movement that stretches across a country, across a continent, is incredibly meaningful and something that I hope we can make happen over and over again around the world.
Thank you, Shelley and Jocelyn, for making this event possible. And a very special thank you to Leymah for making the impossible possible and continuing to inspire us. In your own words, "Don't stop," echoes the older Liberian lady's voice. "Don't ever stop." My answer to her, I never will. We're going to break for lunch and we'll return shortly to honor Professor Terry Winograd. Please enjoy your meal.
Our award presenter requires little introduction. You all know Marissa Mayer as the CEO of Yahoo and a technology pioneer at Google. The accolades are almost endless: 40 under 40, most powerful women, Time 100. But I want to share with you a few things you might not know. Marissa's also my classmate and another one of Terry Winograd's students. In addition to computer science, Marissa studied symbolic systems, an interdisciplinary major that combines computation, philosophy, and cognitive science. And she focused on human-computer interaction and artificial intelligence. I remember Marissa from school as someone incredibly hardworking and driven. She took a heavy course load, but she also made time to teach. Initially as a section leader for Stanford's introductory computer science class, then as a TA, and ultimately became a lecturer and taught courses in CS. Marissa committed the time and the care to introduce students to CS and offer them an on-ramp to a field that they might not otherwise have realized was the right place for them. She's someone who works her heart out and also knows what it means to give back. Please welcome Marissa Mayer.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to share a few words today. I've gotten to know Terry, I'm embarrassed to say, over the past 20 years or so. I've taken classes from him, including ethics and computing. I worked alongside him at Google. I've seen his activity in the community on social and political causes. And I watched in awe as he created the D School here at Stanford, causing the corporate world to take note and put designer in center of minds and conversation, making his already large platform for thought leadership even larger. It's my distinct honor to present him with the AJWS Global Justice Leadership Award. But first, a little bit more about Terry. Terry did his summer sabbaticals in the early 2000s at Google. And I got to know him oddly as a peer. He went from being my professor to being the guy who was sitting next to me in the design reviews. Though I will say I learned as much from him in those settings as I did as a student. And one day, Terry came with an idea. One of the things that Google always struggled with was ambiguous queries. Someone types Jaguar, do they mean the car, the sports team, or the animal? They type April, do they mean a person, the month, do they want the Wikipedia entry, do they want their calendar? And Terry presented a clean little mock-up. It was a normal Google results page, but it just had another button next to the search box on top. And it just said, do it different. So his idea was, if you would just take a clean interpretation of the query, present it, and if it was wrong, press the do it different button, and it would just cycle through different interpretations of the same query. It was a clean, simple, intuitive design idea that took the room by storm. It was the perfect thing that we had been looking for. Ironically, try as we might, and we did talk about it for years, Google couldn't produce the algorithm to implement the button. And as many of you know, if you have Google Home or an Android phone and you've had to repeat yourself and get more specific, you know it's something that they're still working on. But to me, that idea was really emblematic of Terry. Clear, straightforward, his insights and ideals very, very much at the forefront. And the thinking and insight stood the test of time. It's still something that makes that design problem that much easier, and it's a great solution. But to me, do it different became, call it what you will, my internal headline, tagline, hashtag for Terry. Because Terry does it different. He's an independent thinker. He stands up for what is right on ethical issues in computing, but also on gender issues, on ethnic and racial issues, on fundamental issues of social justice, issues in the community. And it's that clear, intuitive thinking and insightfulness that still comes through again and again. It's amplified by his platform here at Stanford, the amazing network he has of peers and former students, and other terrific like-minded people. And unlike Google, Terry does know how to implement doing it different. As shown in all the organizations he's touched, especially at AJWS, in his students, and especially in his beautiful family. And so I could go on and on about Terry, but I'd also like to show this video so you can learn a little bit more about him.
Terry Winograd is an emeritus professor of computer science at Stanford University, the founding director of the program in human-computer interaction. His love for technology has been a lifelong pursuit.
I have a great photo of me with my buzz cut and my high school science project, which was a computer I built. I got started very early. We're still in the 50s at that point.
Terry's commitment to his students runs deep.
I've always said that teaching at Stanford, the best thing you can do is accept the fact that you're getting a lot of students who are better than you are and stay out of their way. Some of them have gone on to take those ideas and turn them into big companies like Google or LinkedIn.
Terry kind of embodies and lives the patience of not just a teacher, but a mentor.
A founder of Computer Professionals for Social Responsibility, Terry extends his work beyond the classroom.
He's an incredibly wonderful human being in every imaginable way.
I've always believed that solving social problems requires social action. Computers can be of help, but you need to see what needs to be done first before you say we're going to solve it with an app.
He has deep values, deep love, deep caring, and wants to be there for people, and is.
Terry is a tireless advocate for human rights, and he's inspired by Jewish values.
I grew up Jewish in a small town in Colorado, and what I learned from my parents is that being Jewish really was a way of thinking about the world, a way of putting your own efforts into making things better for others.
For 30 years, Terry and Carol have been loyal supporters of American Jewish World Service.
For me, AJWS is really the organization that's looking internationally in a way that can make change. In 2008, we went on a study tour to India, and it was really an eye-opening experience. What we learned from traveling with AJWS primarily was how amazing the local leaders are. Being able to find and support those kinds of people is really what AJWS is able to do.
A philanthropic leader for equality and social change, Terry knows the value of innovation in making long-term investments.
I think it's very easy in the philanthropic world to play it safe. AJWS model is different from many global justice organizations in focusing on how do we provide the extra catalyst for change that the people there are leading. For me, that was very much like what investors do here.
Though the future is uncertain, Terry believes we can all play a role in building a better world.
The saying that always resonates is justice, justice, you shall pursue. The key is recognizing where there are injustices and being able to play your part in bringing justice. And AJWS is an ongoing way for us to do that.
I'd like to welcome Terry Winograd to the stage. This is the most incredible distinction, and it's just a token of the recognition for your achievements and contributions to social justice over the years. A little bit about it. It's a statue that was handcrafted by young women and girls in Sanat Kada, an artisan collective in Lucknow, India. An artisan collective in Lucknow, India. The organization promotes traditional art and builds the entrepreneurial skills of the girls in vulnerable and impoverished communities. And we're pleased we have the founder here, Madhava Kukreja, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, who's here with us today. And the card reads, AJWS Global Justice Leadership Award presented to Terry Winograd in honor of Terry's generosity, leadership, and unwavering commitment to the pursuit of social justice. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm, of course, very honored and pleased to be here. I have, as you have heard, tremendous respect for AJWS, both as an organization and for all the wonderful people in it that we've met and worked with over the years. Special thanks to Robert and to Alon and all the staff who put this together, to Marissa for her gracious introduction, that was great, to Jocelyn and Shelley and Jim and Brian for hosting the event, and, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold, all my family and friends, old friends and new friends, who've joined us today to learn more about AJWS and to be inspired by our grantees. So I want to talk about why, for me, AJWS is unique. As Robert mentioned, I wrote a paper a couple of years ago about how AJWS does not follow the sort of standard NGO models and assumptions. And this paper has guided my own thinking about why AJWS is so important in today's world. I'll come back in a few minutes to those principles of entrepreneurship that Robert mentioned. But first, I want to introduce you to an excellent recent book that I ran into by Kentaro Toyama, with a rather strange title of, I quote, Geek Heresy, Rescuing Social Change from the Cult of Technology. Toyama worked for a number of years at Microsoft Research, including being a managing director of the Microsoft Research India and the founder of the Technology for Emerging Markets Research Group. So he was doing interdisciplinary research to understand how the world's poorer communities interact with electronic technology and to invent new ways for technology to support their socioeconomic development. Now, with this background, you would expect him to be a technology enthusiast, like many of our colleagues here in the Valley, looking to find technological innovations that will solve social problems. But he tells a more nuanced and cautionary tale. He describes himself as, quote, a recovering technoholic. He's not opposed to technology. He recognizes that it has many valuable possibilities, but he is against what he calls the pervasive biases of modern do-gooding. He sees a tremendous emphasis being placed on what he calls packaged interventions, or more irreverently, shrink-wrapped quick fixes. He notes that a generation ago, when young people said they wanted to change the world or make an impact, they joined the Peace Corps, in my generation, right? Now they moved to Silicon Valley. They want to come up with great new ideas that will change the world, and we see lots of different forms of incubators and competitions and hackathons, all sorts of modes by which people can work, and they hope that if they come up with a great idea, that will create social change. But in his years of research in India, Toyama saw firsthand many widely trumpeted tech projects that fell by the wayside after an initial splash. He saw rooms full of abandoned high-tech equipment and little evidence of positive effects. And the same can be said for big projects like those of the World Bank, trying to put something in place which causes the change. Toyama realized that technology is not the source of change, but an amplifier. And he calls it the principle of amplification, right? That it can be used in the right context to amplify change, but it doesn't lead to it inherently. Effective change, he says, requires a substrate of positive intent and high capacity among individuals and institutions, the exact substrate that is in stunted supply where social challenges persist. The implementation is often much more critical than the original idea. So how can we foster the capacity that makes social change succeed? So to answer that question, let me go back to this little essay on entrepreneurship and the way that Silicon Valley, around, we see in the business world, invests in startups. So the principles Robert mentioned are ones that I've often heard from investors here. One, invest early. I think you've got Leymah's beautiful testament to how important it was to their work that AJWS was there at the beginning, before it was an obvious thing that this was going to work. Take risks. It was not clear that, that was a huge risk in that case, and many, many others that AJWS supports. It doesn't have to be the, okay, we're going to build a well and everybody will get water kind of project. There's a lot of looking for new possibilities. Big one, bet on passionate people. And I don't need to say much more about passionate people now that you've heard her speech and you're going to hear later. I think it's clear that you don't say the project will do it, you say the people will do it, and the project is the vehicle. It's the way you give them the support to do that. Provide support by creating networks, and I'll come back to that one in a minute because it's an important part of AJWS's work. And then look for game-changing opportunities. Again, I think you've seen an example of that. These all could have been said by somebody looking for startups, and they apply equally to social change. Carol and I visited India and Nicaragua and Thailand on AJWS study tours, and as an aside, I should tell you, if you find the opportunity, definitely go on one of these tours. They're a fantastic opportunity to really learn. They say study tour, they mean it. It's really a learning experience for all of us. And in each country, we were tremendously impressed by the quality of the local people and the groups that were being supported. AJWS puts a huge amount of effort with local staff into identifying and supporting those people who really are going to make things happen. They find the people and bet on those people, and then they work with the projects. Small grants have a big impact. Again, as you heard, Leymah is a great lead into all this, because they amplify the efforts that already have strong and effective local leaders. AJWS also plays the networking role that's so valued in the Sand Hill Road Silicon Valley ecosystem. One town that we visited in rural Thailand, we realized that although the event that we attended was to welcome our delegation and educate us about the project, it actually had a more important role that it was playing because it brought together groups and leaders from around the local area to meet with and work with each other. So we provided an opportunity, but the real action was in networking, in creating a unified group, a unified effort. In their case, it was for land rights, for land reform in Thailand. And finally, in looking for game changers, AJWS has a very strong philosophy that the most effective use of its relatively limited resources is to focus on providing people with opportunities to get their rights, their fundamental rights that then enable them to make fundamental change in their societies. So it's working at the underpinnings that then lead to their potential to do change. The people from the Land Reform Network that we met with in Thailand weren't just working to save their own lands, but to establish principles for how the government makes land decisions in general, what the land rights are of the natives in the country. And then to use that to produce fundamental change. And AJWS was supporting that collaboration. So what's the bottom line? For a Silicon Valley venture firm, it's finding the next Google or Instagram. For AJWS, the bottom line is helping people build a firm foundation of rights and seeing them build on that foundation to improve their lives and those of others in their countries and around the world. Excuse me. Carol and I have recognized over the years as we've worked with AJWS that a significant financial investment in AJWS's approach can lead to serious and lasting change. While small investments to grassroots groups is the key to the approach, in order to scale, it requires significant investment in the grant-making process, the research, the advocacy, and communications. And this is a good investment for all of us to make. It's an investment that Carol and I have been very pleased to support in a large matter over the years. Thanks to my early connections with Google, as Marissa talked about, I am fortunate enough to have the resources to make substantial investments in philanthropy. And AJWS is one of our very largest bets every year. We feel that it's the best way we can make our money do something worthwhile. So I urge you to become long-term supporters and advocates of AJWS as well. The world will be grateful.
There are many ways to change the world, and one of the most powerful is to be a teacher and inspire a generation. Terry, you did this all your career and continue to lead and teach those of us around you. We have heard Leymah's incredible message, and in the seminar we'll hear another transformative grantee in Madhvi Kokreja. But there is no greater way to learn about our work, as Terry just mentioned, than to travel with AJWS and bear witness to our grantees' stories in person. In February 2018, AJWS Vice President Jim Koshland and his wife Kathy will lead a cohort from the Bay Area as part of a study tour to meet our grantees in India. We have information in your brochures and on your tables and on our website at ajws.org. I wish to thank you again for joining Terry, Leymah, and AJWS. Please now join us on the patio for dessert. And for those attending the seminar, we will reconvene here at 1:28. We plan and aspire to begin the seminar sharp at 1:30. Thank you very much.